Hello, everyone. This is RJ Saankhya, and welcome to TALRadio, where we shine a spotlight on organizations and individuals marking remarkable differences in our world. So, stay with us for an inspiring program today as we delve into the impactful work of an organization dedicated to preserving and enhancing the natural landscapes of Cook County. So, enter Friends of the Forest Preserves, a nonprofit organization uniting people to protect, promote, and take care of the forest preserves in Cook County. So, founded in 1998 by a small group of citizens, Friends has grown into a force of thousands working together to ensure that land, water, and life will always thrive in the forest preserves. So, through political advocacy, ecological stewardship, and also community engagement, they ensure that these natural areas remain a source of education, enjoyment, and recreation for current and future generations as well. So, to guide us through this wonderful organization, we have a very special guest with us today. Joining us today is Benjamin Cox, the Executive Director of Friends of the Forest Preserves. And since becoming their first executive director in 2004, Benjamin has been the driving force behind the organization's transformative efforts. So, under his leadership, Friends has grown exponentially for fostering impactful programs and building coalitions that safeguard and celebrate Cook County's natural treasures. So, his passion for conservation and community engagement is always truly inspiring. So, without a further ado, let's welcome Benjamin onto the show. Hello, Benjamin. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So,
Good.
welcome to Time Radio. And let's dive into the questions if you're ready.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. So, can you share the story of how you first became involved with Friends of the Forest Preserves and what motivated you to dedicate your career to this organization?
Yeah, so I grew up here in Cook County and I went to forest preserves and other woods and natural areas, and fishing a lot and those kind of things. And even as a kid, I knew I loved plants and being outside and plants and animals, and it just really that's where I wanted to be. And what I didn't realize as my kind of schooling and my career moved along is that I didn't want to just be an environmentalist. I was a conservationist, which is a little bit different. It's just sort of a subset of that. It has to do with preserving plants, animals, and land for all the good reasons. Even just for the plants and animals, but also for people to get out and enjoy. So as I kind of made my way along in my career, figuring out I didn't want to be a scientist because I wasn't good at the math and the science, or figuring, trying to be a journalist and writing about environmental issues, and then finding my way through some other nonprofits that involved some environmental work, but not very much. Honestly, I saw this position available. Had been an all volunteer organization for about 5 years, and they were ready to hire an executive director, and I applied and was fortunate enough to get the job. I always laugh because when I started, I was the executive director of one, but the organization grew and grew, and there was a significant volunteer effort before I was there, and it continues to this day. So now we're a pretty big organization, and we get a lot of work done.
Wonderful. So, can you discuss the specific challenges faced by the forest preserves in Cook County and how exactly does Friends addresses these issues through its programs?
Yeah, so one of the really interesting things about the forest preserves in Cook County, Cook County, Illinois is home to Chicago, and we're in a region with about 10 million people. Cook County alone has 5 million, which is more than like New Zealand, for example, and I'm sure, it's one of the biggest. I think it's the second largest county in the country by population. It's also a pretty large county geographically, at least for the Chicago area. I think obviously there's counties throughout the country that are much bigger, but um, the forest preserves were set up back after the Chicago fire when the whole city was sort of devastated, and folks came together and made a plan and said, okay, we've got a chance to do this again. How are we going to do it differently this time? And they one of the on top of economic plans and other development plans, how they're going to lay out the city and those kinds of things. They planned for a free and clear lakefront, parks and boulevards in the city, and forest preserves outside of the city. So forest preserves were intended to be mostly natural. And so they're about 80% natural with 20% developed for recreation and maintenance facilities and nature centers and those types of activities, campgrounds. But 80% is natural, and folks would think, well, what's in Chicago? What's in that region that's great? And it's sort of an interesting place at the tip of Lake Michigan where the northern forests and the prairies and the wetlands, and there's dune and swale complexes here because we're on Lake Michigan. There's actually sand dunes. All that stuff kind of comes together here, and you get an incredible mix of ecosystems. The other thing you get is a whole lot of people. And the forest preserves are little pockets. So it's about 70,000 acres an acre is about the size of a football field without the end zones. And so 70,000 of those would make up about half the size of the city of Chicago. So it's about 11% of the county. It's really a significant amount of land, but that also means that as little pieces throughout, or some of them aren't that little actually, but there's a lot of edges and there's a lot of input from human activity. So there's invasive species and there's water issues and hydrological issues and dumping and just a lot of other things. That said, there's pretty aggressive and sustained efforts by volunteers and Forest Preserve staff and contractors and folks offer funding to help take care of those places and to keep them natural. The Cook County, because they started so early in preserving the land, has the most number of threatened and endangered species that find refuge in the forest preserves in the whole state. And that seems kind of counterintuitive, but most of the state was plowed under for farming. And so this is because they started over 100 years ago preserving land here. There's some of the best examples of natural local ecosystems here that with care they thrive. And that's a big part of our job is to help find people to help take care of them and also to get out and enjoy them and appreciate them.
Wonderful, really inspiring. So, how does Friends educate and empower local communities to take active roles in forest preservation?
So we have a couple of main ways that we do that, and the first is through our Conservation Corps programming for youth and adults. So we actually hire people to come out and get the skills that they need to work in the forest preserves and to work in this field of conservation. So they get training and certification and things like chainsaw and prescribed fire and herbicide application and plant identification and seed collecting and on and on and on. And we do that with youth. They don't do as much of the power tools and things, but we do get them exposed to it through summer high school programs. So we have hundreds of kids in the summer that are out getting paid to work in the forest preserves and also to learn how to work together as a team and to get skills that they can use in any career going forward. So even if they don't stay in conservation, they get skills that help them in their future jobs. And then we also have adult programs that take people even farther with those certifications, and they then are eligible to work for the Forest Preserve District, park districts, like I said, ecological restoration contractors, the national parks, state parks, and on and on and on. So that's one way through Conservation Corps. We do volunteer organizing where you actually go out in the community and find folks that might want to join in the volunteer efforts and help them get the certifications and trainings they need to do the work. And also help plug them into communities and help build communities at specific forest preserves so that folks, it's their sort of their hobby, their weekend activity, their community. They can get out and be part of something where they're actually making a difference. And then we also do really good engagement programming. We work very hard at this, and we're starting to really expand it. Where we get into communities where folks maybe aren't very involved in the forest preserves and not just taking them, and saying, come work right away and volunteer, but actually come out and enjoy the place and get to know it and talk to your community about it. And so we do a lot of work to get folks out for things like stretch and walks or yoga or sip and paint or trailblazing programs where they go out and lead other folks on walks and just where they get to know the forest preserves and enjoy them. And we found that if we provide stipends to community leaders, small stipends throughout the year, it really helps them to thank them for the work they're doing, and it helps them be more consistent, and really to just do a great job of bringing the same group of people out, and you have almost a little club that develops, that goes out and does these activities on a regular basis. So we've got a lot of ways that we really get people involved in the forest preserves.
Great. Thanks a lot for giving that information. It sounds fun. So, another question is, can you share a success story that you've witnessed up close during your tenure with friends?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is I live in Chicago. I live on the South Side, which a lot of folks would think is scary, but it's a big and diverse city. There's certainly some areas around here on the South Side that aren't very wealthy. They have a lot of challenges. One of the first suburbs south of the city here is a community called Riverdale, where there's a couple of really nice forest preserves. And actually, the forest preserve also has some golf courses, and there's a really nice golf course there too. So there was one of the forest preserves called Kickapoo Woods, sits along the Little Calumet River, a branch of the Little Calumet River. And there's a big walking path there that's about a mile, a big mile long loop that people like to walk. There's a picnic grove where people like in picnic shelters where people come every day to hang out and see their friends and get together with their community. There's also a little model airplane field where the older guys fly remote control model airplanes. So there's a lot of activity there. But like I said before, forest preserves are mostly natural, and the natural area there was pretty overrun with invasive species, specifically brush. So things like, shrubs that were brought in from Europe and Asia that we like in our yards, but they don't do well in the forest preserves. They actually they do too well. They don't do well for the forest preserves. They really take over and they shade out everything else. And about 15 years ago, maybe even actually a little longer now, one of the forest preserve ecologists said, we really need some volunteers to go out and take care of this little prairie there. And I took my wife and my two little kids out, and we tried to find this prairie. And we kind of fighting our way through this kind of thorny brush, we found an area that seemed like there was some prairie plants. This is kind of early in my career, so I knew some, but not enough to really know. But I thought this kind of looks like it. I think this is it. And there was a lot of brush mixed in, but you could also tell that there was a pretty nice mix of plants there. And we brought some other volunteers out after that to kind of look at it and say, hey, would anybody like to try and start volunteer days here and lead folks here? And somebody did, and they did just a very okay job. They were sort of had a lot of, they had a couple kids themselves. They had a business. They had, a lot of different activities going on. So sometimes their volunteers would be good. Volunteer days would be well organized, and sometimes not. We'll leave it at that. But just that little bit of effort of getting out even once a month to remove some brush and to get some attention to the place from the forest preserve staff, and to then start to attract funding from foundations. Another nonprofit or two started getting interested in that site. Riverdale being a poorer community in an area where the forest preserves maybe don't get the attention that they do in other places, or didn't at that time. It made sense to really, to put extra effort in at this place. And today, that prairie area that might have been a few acres has been expanded to, many, many acres. I don't know, 50, 60, 70 acres with different grant funding and contractor help. And like I said, Forest Preserve staff came out, and our Conservation Corps has done a lot of work there. And now, before you couldn't even see the river as you're walking around this loop because there's so much brush. And now we've opened that up. There's a boat launch where people are going out with staff to try canoeing for the first time. The prairies, has really rebounded and is, full of a diversity of plants, which then brings a big diversity of animals. The other thing about brush is when it's along trails, it feels sort of like where, something dangerous would hide to jump out and get you. And so when you open up that brush, you can see farther. That now you're seeing flowers and butterflies and birds, and it's just transformed the place. And we've seen the use of the place go up and the interest in it go up. And it's a community asset for folks that was not in bad shape before, but the nature was certainly struggling. And so to have that come back and be there, for people to enjoy is I think is a tremendous success.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, how does Friends collaborate with other organizations and stakeholders to enhance its programs and reach?
So we work really hard, especially in our engagement programming, but also Conservation Corps and other, just grant opportunities, to collaborate. Chicago's conservation community is known to be very collaborative. It's kind of different, I guess, than some other places in the country. You can imagine as you're competing for funding, you might start to sort of trip over each other and try and outcompete each other. And here, there's a broader organization called Chicago Wilderness, and it's an alliance of organizations that have agreed to work on biodiversity recovery. So helping natural areas be healthier so that there's, all the plants and animals can thrive in them. And that's all about, not just for the plants and animals, which is enough, but also for people to get out and enjoy them and learn from them and be part of nature. Um, so that organization sort of sets the table for collaboration for everyone. And so we're used to very much, going in together on grants and projects and but also because Friends has grown from a very small grassrootsy organization to more of a medium-sized nonprofit now with, over 2,500 members and thousands of Conservation Corps alumni and lots of social media contacts, 10 to 20,000 email and social media contacts. So we've got a pretty big reach. It's important for us to stay in touch in the local community, so we're not just this organization that comes swooping in to do things and leaves, but that we work hard to build relationships with small local organizations. So we do that with all types of, sort of social recovery, folks who've had some challenges in life, that might be in a program that helps them with their addiction or their job challenges, or they're coming out of incarceration, and we're connected with those organizations to show folks that there's a path here in the forest preserves for them, both career-wise or as a volunteer, or just even as a place to find respite and some peace. But or we'll work with local organizations that have a different focus. Maybe they're an arts organization. We've done some little plays for folks out in the forest preserves, or maybe they're a specific sort of community that organization, and we work hard with them to make connections to and opportunities for them in the forest preserves. And that way, we really are part of the community by connecting with folks that know what the community wants, that there are groups of people that we're working with and talking to. So we're not just showing up to like deliver programs, but we're there to talk to them about what is it that you want to see, what is it that you want to do, and then we'll help to build those programs with them and run those programs. And we found that to be incredibly successful. So it takes a long time. It's a lot of long-term community building and relationship building and trust building, but then you see the long-term impacts of folks benefiting from the forest preserves and then eventually helping them too.
Wonderful. That's a lot of effort, but it also pays off. So, I would also want to know what challenges has Friends faced in its mission, and how have you and your team overcome them, like in your experience?
One of the biggest challenges is we're an independent nonprofit organization trying to help a government do a better job, and they may or may not want us to help. Generally, they're very receptive, but they have their work to do too, and here we are, and lots of other organizations are knocking on their door saying, "Hey, we've got an idea. Hey, we think you need to do this better. You need to do that better." So it's not the same as some folks might know what a land trust is, where it's a nonprofit that owns its own land and takes care of it. It's not the same because this technically is owned by the Forest Preserves of Cook County. It really belongs to all the people in Cook County. And so it's we can't just do whatever we want. We need to work with them and figure out how to do it in a way that makes sense and in the places that make sense. So that's been a very long and challenging road to sort of negotiate the middle of sort of being their best friend that helps in every way we can, but also will tell them when we think they're not doing something right. And it's an ongoing relationship that has to be nurtured and worked on. And of course, things like Conservation Corps programming are very expensive because we pay people, we pay them a living wage, and we make sure, that they have benefits and that sort of thing. It's a year-round position for the adult folks. And so, those crews are not inexpensive to run. And nonprofit is just it means that we're not here to make a bunch of money for shareholders or something like that. We're here to raise money to achieve our mission. So the more money that we can raise, the more folks that we can get out in the forest preserves to help improve them, and to get out and enjoy them, and protect them, and be advocates for them. And so that's the challenge. The ongoing nonprofit fundraising challenge is always there. So and the more individuals that you have contributing, the better, because that funding is very stable generally. It doesn't usually come with very many strings attached. It's not like a big grant that you might get, which sounds great, like a bunch of money, but it usually requires you to do very specific things. And it doesn't necessarily directly help sustain the organization. Sometimes the money is really just about work on the ground, which is great, but that help from individuals really make sure that the organization can thrive and that we can continue our work year after year.
Great. So, can you share your vision for the future of Friends and the forest preserves it serves?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Friends, when I first started, you look at the website, and I was before I got the job, I was checking out the website, and I found lots of pictures of nature, but not very many pictures of people. I think there was one. And the idea, at first it was kind of build the organization and get some programming going so that it could sustain itself and have some funding to grow a little bit. And it took a while to realize that the friends are really, and the people are really what it's all about. And so the bigger that we can be as far as membership goes, as far as volunteers go, the better, because that just the organization has become its own sort of entity that thrives because of all the energy and effort that people put into it. So that's really our biggest goal, is to just keep growing Friends, the actual number of people that are involved, because that means we'll be having that much bigger impact. And the trick is getting out there and and making sure people know who we are. It's a big place with lots of different competing voices. 5 million people in Cook County's. There's a lot of different activities, a lot of different interests, and so as an organization, we're 25 years old, but we're one of many in the region of nonprofits, and all the other activities that people are interested in. So spreading the word and getting our name out there, and helping people find a way to get involved is, that's our biggest goal. And finding all the best ways to do that is what we really focus on. Because at the end of the day, we're an advocacy organization, making sure the forest preserves are run well, that they're taken care of, that they're here for future generations, and for all of us, that they're in good condition, trails and the other amenities, and all that's there for us to enjoy. And without a diversity and a significant number of voices, that could go away. People could decide that the forest preserves aren't important, that it'd be better if they were developed, if they were used for some other purpose, like so much of the land here in Cook County is. And so it's important to make sure there's a strong, thriving community that is the voice for the land and the plants and animals, and the voice of the people that benefit from them. Because even if you don't ever go use them, you still benefit from having good natural areas around to help cool and clean the water, and cool and clean the air, and provide a place for wildlife. Everybody seems to value that in the region. So, and I think across the country even. So, at a minimum, even if you don't use them, most people know they're important, and we want to make sure that legacy continues.
Yeah. So, reflecting on your journey with Friends, what accomplishments are you the most proud of? I mean, do you like to share with us some moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming to Friends, I'd been at an AmeriCorps program a couple years before that, where I had the opportunity to work at a place called the Peace Learning Center, where we taught fourth grade students conflict resolution skills. It was in a natural setting in Indianapolis, in a big city park. And so part of what we would do is take kids on a hike every day. And I, being the outdoorsy kind of environmentally guy, I was like, I'll do that. And I did a lot of other training too, but that was one of the main things I did every day. And I would get these kids out from across the city of Indianapolis and say, hey, have you have you ever been to a place like this before? And very few hands would go up as we're hiking on these trails. Some kids would even be afraid. A lot of kids just didn't know, sort of what we were doing and why we were out there. And it was kind of sad for me because, like I said at the beginning, I spent a lot of time outdoors as a kid in the suburbs of Chicago and had the benefit of the forest preserves. And I thought, how do I get back to Chicago where I grew up and where I really love. I've been here for over 20 years now. This go around. How do I get back there and get people outside and get these kids out and maybe doing service projects or something, something that a nonprofit could provide that would get these kids exposure to nature. What I didn't know is that that's just called Conservation Corps programming. It's a model that happens across the country in a lot of different ways. But and just a few years into my job, we had our first crew out. It's a short program, 16 weeks. We did that for a few years, and then we added a summer high school program. Eventually, we had added adult programs, and we've grown it and grown it. And so I'm exceedingly proud to look back and and say that we've had well over 2,500 alumni over all these years. Many of these folks are now working at parks and park districts, forest preserve districts, national parks. And I could go on and on about places that folks from here in Illinois, in Cook County, a diversity of folks even are out really making an impact. And so that's something I'm very proud of. And obviously, I didn't do that on my own. I've done that with a lot of help from a lot of people, both staff, but also community folks helping us find folks for the programs and funders and forest preserve staff and elected officials that are interested in these types of programs. And I could go on and on. So it's been a really rewarding thing to get done. I'd say the other big win is that a couple years ago, we actually worked hard and built a very large coalition with a bunch of other folks of 180 plus organizations that helped lead a referendum. So a ballot initiative for increased funding for the forest preserves. It's kind of wonky stuff, but the forest preserve basically can't raise their own taxes. It's a special unit of government, so it needs either the voters to vote to do that or the state legislature to do it. And so we organized a coalition to run a campaign that raised an additional $40+ million for the forest preserve government per year. It's not a very big government by considering how big the county is. It's both by budget and by staff size. It's not very big, and they had not had any kind of significant increase in a very long time. And so it was because of all the work we've done to help the forest preserves really find their way and be run better and have better attention from the elected officials, and the staffing was better, and I could go on and on about how improved it was. Folks saw that and realized how important the forest preserves were, especially after the pandemic. They appreciated the forest preserves because there weren't a lot of places you can go and do things, but they could get outside there and still be distant and socially distant when we were all really concerned with that, with the pandemic, and get out and enjoy the forest preserves. And so in 2022, that item was on the ballot, and it passed at almost 70% of the vote, which right now we call a landslide 54% of the vote or something like that. So to have 70% of people that voted in the county vote for this was pretty amazing. And it said a lot about the work that we've all done to help improve the forest preserves. And there's a lot more work to do, and we're glad to have been able to bring more resources to the table to be able to do that. That money is for the government, not so much for Friends of the Forest Preserve. So our fundraising keeps going. So there we go.
Great.
But it's a a big milestone in my career for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, let me ask you one important question. How can our listeners contribute to this cause? I mean, could you guide us through how they can donate or get involved in any way?
Yeah, so if you're in the Chicago region, reach out. There's plenty of volunteer activities if you want to get involved that way. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, not just out in the forest preserves removing brush, but there's all kinds of activities that we could help connect you with, leading walks or helping us with fundraising events or engagement activities. There's all kinds of things that we could do. And we can also connect you with other organizations in the region too. But also, obviously you can donate to Friends of the Forest Preserves. You can be a member. We have members in something like 48 states, which is kind of amazing to me. It's such a local organization. So, friends, you can donate and become a member at the acronym for Friends, so FOTFP.org. And that simple membership for us helps do a lot of things. The funding is important, as I talked about before, but also it means that when we go and talk to elected officials, we can say that we've got a large, group of advocates that are concerned about the forest preserves. And if you don't have a lot of money to influence elected officials, it's good to have a lot of voices because they're concerned about votes. And that's sort of community organizing 101 to know that if you don't have money to provide influence, then having voices is really important because they're concerned about being reelected. We've gotten past that sort of phase, I think, with the commissioners. They know we're a strong organization, that we have a lot of reach, and we need to be able to maintain that position with them so that they really appreciate that we know what we're talking about. We've got a lot of voices at the table that tell us, what's important, and that we bring that message to them. So that's a long way of saying you can volunteer or you can donate. Those are two of the biggest ways to get involved. And if you just Google Friends of the Forest Preserves, we'd pop right up.
So, well, that comes to the end of our interview. But is there anything else that you may want to add?
I just want to say thank you. This is, I love talking to TALRadio. We've done it before a few years back, and it's a great connection. So thank you so much. It's been great talking to you today.
Thank you. We're really honored to have you on the show today. And listeners who wish to support Friends of the Forest Preserves can visit their donation page for more information. And we hope that our listeners will contribute to this vital cause. Thank you again, Benjamin, for sharing your insights and experiences. And it was truly inspiring to have you on to the show. So that was Benjamin Cox, Executive Director at Friends of the Forest Preserves. And I hope you find that interview insightful. We'll be back with more inspirational stories. And until then, stay tuned to TAL Radio, powered by Touch a Life Foundation. And this is me, RJ Saankhya, signing off for today. Take care, everyone.